Alright, you'll notice I've fastened this piece of scrap lumber onto the table here. When you freehand shape, you don't, with the bearing especially, you don't want to just kind of float this into the cutter because this will grab and fling it. So you want to have some kind of support when you start to come in here. The cutter can't grab a hold of this thing and throw it. Now, means that this is clamped out here, it feels pretty solid. Hopefully it won't do that. It's not as critical on my other piece because I'm going into a curve instead of something that has an end on it, and I can kind of ease it into that. Plus I'm going to climb cut the first pass. Remember, climb cutting is going with the push of the cutter. Then I'll turn around and push against it, which is the way you normally cut. You normally feed this way. Climb cutting you feed this way. And if I would feed this straight in there, it would shoot that across the room. And I've actually, even with the regular feed, had stuff go flying when I didn't have the power feeder quite positioned right. If something wasn't tight, shapers are very nasty, nasty, nasty pieces of equipment. And don't hear too often about anybody getting into a shaper, but probably mostly because they're used with a power feeder normally. But it's an incredibly dangerous machine and you need to be always aware of that. Now I think I have this plugged in. Yes, I do. I'm going to turn this on. Feed this in here. Once I hit the bearing, it's not that big of a deal. It's not going to go any further into the cutter than what the bearing will allow it to do. Now, I'm going to measure this and make sure I have 5/16. That's what I'm shooting for. I'll grab my tape real quick here. Remember, I have a whole inch and 3/16 here to work with, so I've got room to sand on both sides. The panel is 3/4 thick, which will give me a 1/16 there to sand, and then I'll have a 1/16 here because I want to end up about 1/4. This must be maybe a hair undersized, but this was one of the pieces. Yeah, it's 1 1/8. This was one of the scrap pieces I got out of the bucket. So I'm going to stop the camera, remove this, and go ahead and do my piece.